Hi guys, Scrappy again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Following arguably OpTic's worst ever stint in their history as a Call of Duty organisation, Scump has certainly been given his perspective on what is happening right now behind the scenes. He was part of this team for many a year and probably understands, if they're falling short, exactly where that might be coming from. Talking about lack of trust in the team right now in terms of their communication, saying that there's some serious concerns on Scump's side, how they're going to perform going forwards. JP, the coach of the team as well, gives his perspective on the situation, but it's not exactly looking good going into Major 4 in Burbank. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Firstly, this is kind of remarkable, but I thought I'd at least mention it, that it seems like there is some difference in the regen times, almost as if there are different patch updates that are currently being played on. So just have a look at this real quick. After looking over some regen times of recent matches, we found there is a possibility you can load into the game with the pre-patch healing or the post-patch healing, right? Which of course happened a while ago now, where basically you regen faster, right? These are two separate games from two separate series taken from today's games in the Challengers Cup. So we can see right here that, you know, Pack and Denta, they go down at the same time to the, similar levels of HP. But then right about here, you'll find that on the top, it starts regenning earlier and then it starts regenning on the bottom. Like, that's a good, second in that. So it seems like it's possible right now to spawn into a game in custom games where you either play on pre-patch or post-patch healing, which, you know, it might not even be that noticeable. It probably would be to good players, to be fair. And obviously these guys have noticed it because, you know, they're playing it and they think there's something going on here. But it's literally a different game as well, to some level. I mean, it's kind of absurd. And if this is different, the pre-patch or the post-patch healing, then what else could be different? Is it possible to spawn into a game with something else? It's one of these things. There's always, at the end of the season, just something that happens or something that's found out or something that's realized that people are like, wow, this is kind of game-breaking, and what are we going to do about it, right? The devs going to be able to fix this in time. Apparently in the CDL, they're still playing on the old patch stuff. So by comparison here, this is the new patch healing. This is the old patch healing, which is obviously far slower. And yeah, looks like they're still, the pros, playing on the old patch. So maybe in the CDL side, there's no, I mean, the real concern is if it's different. I don't really care, old patch or new patch in terms of health, healing, and whatever. It is what it is. What matters is that it's the same all the time. So as long as it's the same for the pros every time they play it on those CDL settings, then that's okay. But if the same thing is potentially happening as it is in customs, where it just decides whether it wants to use the old or the new version, then of course that is a serious problem. Speaking of Scrappy, he ended the stage with the highest overall KD, with genuinely one of the highest overall KDs that we have ever seen. It's very rare that you see an overall KD down here in the 1.1s. Usually someone has a 1.2 or above. But no, this time Scrappy with a 1.15 was the highest overall KD. Then Cellium, which is, you know, expected, it's Cellium, right? But he's at a 1.13. MettalZ closes out, CleanX, HyDra as always, with a 1.11 to close the stage. This is what's going on in the respective game modes. So of course in the different game modes you'll have smaller sample sizes, so more opportunity, shall we say, to have higher KDs. Scrappy leads the line there with a 1.26, MettalZ, Sib, even Nero, and then HyDra. So interesting in a way that New York, despite not having a great stage, they went 4-3, 7th seeds. They play FaZe round 1. Nobody on FaZe is here. Two of the Subliners guys are here, including HyDra, of course, who, yeah, he's always going to be up there in the numbers. Sparks, by the way, tops the numbers for S&D KD. He was in that Minnesota Rocket team very briefly, then they got rid of him again for accuracy. And accuracy in the team are going to have a hard time in the major, right? Because if you missed earlier today's video, they play either FaZe or the New York Subliners in the first round of the losers bracket. It's not looking good for them. There's no Spartan anymore either. Yes, he played 2 series. He lost 2 series. They kind of got slammed in some of the hard points in those series, but his search and destroy was good, and people will come out of this saying, you know what, Spart could be a good asset for a team next season, depending on the circumstances. This is where the FaZe boys kind of come into their own a little bit. They've clearly worked on their search and destroy. Simp at a 1.4, basically the same with Cell. MettalZ is here again, by the way, which is very impressive for Miami, it's got to be said, and even Crump with a good stage. And in control, it's CleanX, Cell, Dashy. So a couple of the guys from OpTic have some appearances here, but you know, not really that many. And obviously it's their search and destroy that really dragged them down this particular stage. Even as Envoy says yesterday, GG's FaZe and OpTic ended 6-1 on the split. The squad is flowing right now, land from here on out. And it's not just Major 4, it's not just the World Championship, it's the Esports World Cup in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia as well. That is one of the big talking points. we still don't know what's going on there, really, about the roster lock and everything, because apparently on the 27th of June, which is the day that Major 4 starts, that is the roster lock for the tournament in Riyadh, the Esports World Cup. At that point, whatever players are on your roster, that's what you have to go with. At least that's the understanding. There are rumours that maybe there's going to be some sort of changes to that, or at least it might be possible to make a change. But let's say, theoretically, OpTic finished the World Championship. They've had a terrible Major 4. They've come, top 6 at Champs, and they've just got to blow it up. They get involved in Rostermania, they make some changes, whatever those changes might be. We can feel free to speculate on that. Maybe this won't happen at all. But then what happens for the Esports World Cup? They probably want to attend and play for $1.8 million. So can they attend with their new roster they've just formed? This, of course, applies for any team. Or do they have to attend with a roster of players they've just dropped? Or, is it possible to have somebody else on the team just in case as a substitute backup option, such as Seth Scumpy Abner? There's lots of options, but there may be few options. We just don't really know at the moment. So I want to just share, especially Scump and also Zinni, and then, of course, coach of the team, JP. We haven't really heard from Karma on this yet. You'll be interested to see if Karma turns on the stream over the coming days, just because we know, of course, what happens earlier in the season when Pred was making questionable plays and Karma effectively publicly called him out on it. And after that, they went on to win the major. So that seemed to work rather well. JP is coach of the team, more like an analyst of the team, but obviously he's still there every single day, so he understands what's going on. And he says, he kind of echoes the sentiment that others have made. They didn't get complacent, or they're not complacent. They're not thinking, we'll be fine on LAN. And I think that's a realization that OpTic have to have. I think that if OpTic this stage went like 3-4 and they, let's say, beat Boston, or they just did enough, let's say, to make it to the winners bracket in the ends, maybe they beat Ravens or beat Rocker earlier on, then they beat Boston, and then they beat Miami with the sub, they might have said, you know what? We're fine, it's just online cheese, we'll get to LAN, we'll be playing better. And that I think is a bit of a concerning mindset, because if you have that mindset going into LAN, you're probably going to get exposed if you're actually not playing all that well. I think for OpTic, though, now, they know full well they're not playing well. They know they've got so much to work on. It's not just online stuff. And therefore, the idea of them getting complacent, maybe that was true after the major to some degree, but I think I agree with JP's kind of opinion here that they've been putting in a lot of work, because they must have been, let's be real, putting in a lot of work over the last few weeks to try and get back to where they need to be. The issue is that Scump's kind of getting at, is it, from a mentality point of view, difficult to get back there? Because the talent is clearly still there. Their search and destroy has been woeful. Everybody knows that. Watching some of the plays in search, Studdy was losing full about it yesterday on the broadcast to I Hold Shift, just being like, what are these guys doing? And I even mentioned a specific play in the final rounds of yesterday's game against Toronto when they had a first blood advantage. They had all the situations they wanted, and they just all, rush forward and eventually die. Shotzzy's in a 1v1. You can't win them all. He goes down to Insight in a 1v1, which you're usually expecting him to win anyway, Insight, because he's good at those cyber situations. So very tricky set of circumstances for OpTic as of late, especially because there's so much pressure on. They won a major, and after the major victory, they celebrate a lot, and for good reason, right? I don't begrudge OpTic celebrating, but I know people have said over the last few days, like OpTic won Toronto, they treated it like they'd won the World Championship, and, then after, what happened afterwards has been a bit of a different story. And of course, you've got to celebrate your victories, but clearly something's happened since then, and it's difficult to know whether they can get back there, because also there's big pressure for this year's World Championship. Major 4 is like, whatever. You want to win Major 4, obviously, but there's no fans there. The prize money is nowhere near as big as it is for the World Championship, and of course even for the Esports World Cup that's coming up a month after Champs in Dallas. But it's Champs in Dallas. It's Champs in Dallas hosted by OpTic. Like, this was meant to be the year that OpTic make it to the grand finals, if not win the entire thing. The last time they were in a grand finals, OpTic, was back in 2017, which they won in, it was Orlando, wasn't it, that year? Of course, because Formal has a rather good record in that particular city and state, I think. But that was the last time they were in a grand finals of the World Championship. This year, given the strength of their team, given what they were doing for the majority of the season, that was, this is meant to be the chance. And maybe it still can be the chance. But the pressure is really there to deliver this year for OpTic, more so than maybe it usually is. And potentially, that's one of the hurdles they've got to overcome. Because as Scump says, he feels like watching their play, listening to their comms, there's a lack of trust in their communication.
But yeah, it's just that glimmer of hope was too late. And it just scares me because, again, now we're going into the major. Today was a big bounce back series for us. We lose to Boston yesterday, solidify ourselves in losers. Now we have a chance to beat a top team in Toronto, and we get 3-0'd. It just worries me about the team morale, confidence going into the major.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we also look slower than we did before.
100%.
Like, I feel like every team is so much quicker. Like, the decision-making, the cohesion, the team chows, it just looks like we're like a step back. Like, we're like a second behind in every play we're making. It's a lot of individuals. It's just like, it's not up in your face. It's not like action-packed. It's not like what it was.
Yeah.
The pacing just seems off. I'm not sure if it was because the MCW gets buffed, play styles change with 3 trophies. Obviously, like, the game changed in these little ways that could technically change teams' play styles, but it looks like ours is pretty drastic.
Yeah. No.
Like, I feel like
100%.
Pred and Shotzzy have been playing at a different pace.
Yep.
And I think even Ken and Brandon been like of different pace as well. It's just like it's weird. It's hard to actually pinpoint it, but it just looks off. Like, you can just tell.
There's a lot of hesitation. There's a lot of hesitation right now, and usually what that stems from is a lack of trust within the team. Like, if somebody's calming something and you don't fully trust everything that they're saying, sometimes you'll hesitate. And even those little hesitations sometimes can throw off the timings. I saw an example of it today in the first round of the search. It just looks sloppy. It looks like we're not coordinated. It looks like I said, there's a lack of trust in the communication right now, and a 10-game win streak. I mean, I think it goes without saying that there's a lack of trust in the comms right now, and whoever's calling the strats, I'm sure it's Ant. Ant usually calls strats. He's probably calming stuff, and someone will make the play a little bit different or take a timing differently, and that can throw. There's so many things right now, and you can just clearly tell it's evident that the team has some confidence struggles and trust issues right now in the team, which is crazy. Again, a lot of people have been like, how the fuck does this happen? We just won a major. Now we're on a 10-game search losing streak, and we're 1-6. I mean, we've lost to basically everyone this split. We won our first match of the split. I forget who it was against. Miami, and then we've lost 6 straight. It's crazy, but let's take a look at some of these clips.
Honestly, like, we had a lot of talks after, or like just now after the match. I think what you guys were saying on the couch before was like pretty warranted. Like, it's to me, like, looking from outside perspective, and Damon, it's a confidence thing at first, and it all kind of stems from that. But like, the one thing I do want to say is, I don't want to hear anything about like anyone being content with this or complacency or whatever. Like, I feel like we're working as hard, or if not harder than before the major, to try and get this back on track, because like, obviously no one's in a situation where we're like trying to not do well. Like, we are trying our hardest to like actively improve this.
That was already one of my questions. How's the team's overall morale? I mean, are the vibes low? Are they, or is it more so just focusing on?
They're probably low.
I mean, they were. I'll be honest. Like, they were pretty low after the Boston match, but like going today, like, we knew we were starting loser bracket. It's like, just go out there,
do your best.
And everyone going into LAN, like, obviously, like, I hate putting on online, but no one likes online.
No.
And going to LAN is a new, fresh perspective where it's like, all right, let's just go in loser bracket and become the Grim Reapers down there. You know, like, having a different mindset of like, okay, these are the cards we're dealt here. Like, this is the ones we dealt for ourselves. But let's, you know, they want to make champs. All right, let's knock them off. You know, like, we have to play these guys. They beat us online. All right, let's knock them off at LAN. So
fuck them.
You have to shift your mindset in that sense. So.
Yeah. So OpTic are going to try and stay positive for good reason. As JP says, you know, we'll go to the losers bracket, become the Grim Reapers, just absolutely farm the teams down there. But it's always difficult. I mean, you're starting top 12. They've got to beat, it'll be either Thieves or Miami to get to top 8. Then they've got to beat either Ravens or probably Gorillas, maybe Toronto, but very unlikely. So probably Ravens or Gorillas, let's say, in that losers bracket. Then, you know, the bracket will flip. They'll probably play a pretty good team in the winner's side at that point. So, you know, like a Seattle or something. It's going to be tricky. They shouldn't underestimate the challenge they've got on their hands. But Scump was on this OpTic team for a very long time. He's been through the ups and downs. And obviously Zinni has his thoughts as well on the pacing of the team. The Scump and Shotzzy, or the Pred and Shotzzy thing we talk about all the time. The Dashy and Kenny thing, probably less talked about, but is still potentially relevant. And look, we've seen earlier in the season, process episodes when they've not been going at each other's necks, right, but just having good constructive criticism for each other. Then you get into a situation where things are going to plan, you're losing all the online series, you're going to LAN and potentially playing a couple of series there as well. Is there really the time or the ability for OpTic to get that teamwork really firing again as it was before? Because I think that's probably a key problem. And, you know, if Scump's talking about that maybe Kenny isn't trusting the plays that his teammates are going to make, therefore, you know, Kenny has even said this, if he really has to think all the time about what his teammates are doing, where they are, what they're doing on the map, he can't play as well as he can individually. And maybe that's what's going on. Kenny's constantly thinking, damn, you know, what's this guy Pred doing? Is Dashy close to me? Like, do I trust Pred to make the right play in this moment? Whatever, just obviously speculation, but that's kind of what Scump is getting at, that in certain moments, there is concerns about that at OpTic, and it's also a confidence thing. We know this OpTic team thrives massively on being a confident roster. When they are, like they were on Sunday, they look basically unstoppable. But if they're not, it works the other way. Like, certainly these players are big confidence players, and even maybe more so than other teams. And right now, it's going to be difficult to get that back on track. And JB says, okay, the vibes aren't terrible. The vibes obviously weren't great after Boston for understandable reasons, but they still think there's a chance. It's just going to be a serious uphill battle. This is what the Flank guys put together for their predictions for the tournament. They have Ultra winning, FaZe in seconds. They still have the top 4 being the top 4. So they have it working out that OpTic will, you know, take down Thieves, take down Ravens, take down Legion, which is definitely possible, and make it to top 4, which is, you know, top 4 is the bare minimum for OpTic this event to say, okay, that is going to give us at least some momentum going into champs. But I still think that's going to be a tricky road the way that they're currently playing. But very much interested your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.